welcome to Ponder and Practice, the podcast for professional, high-achieving women who are ready to swap hustle for harmony, exhaustion for energy, and pain for power. I'm Dr. Katherine Hoffman, and I help value-driven, ambitious women achieve their goals by setting artful, integrity-aligned boundaries that create space for meaningful work and sincere connection. So, are you ready to discover the power of no? Well, let's get started. Hey there, friend, and welcome to another episode of Ponder and Practice. What a pleasure and an honor it is to be able to share this time and space with you. I know that you can be listening to one of like a million things, so it is not lost on me that you have chosen to hang out and take a listen to all the stuff that I have to say. So thanks. It really is an honor, and I don't want to take that for granted at all. If you have listened to the show before, you could tell that the intro was a little bit different today. I got some new tunes, got a new voiceover, and I'm shifting gears a little bit. We're going to shift gears here at Ponder and Practice. I am going to be focusing on supporting folks in boundary setting. And more specifically, I think everybody could probably do with a little bit better boundary setting in many areas of life. But the folks who are finding me and the folks who I'm finding that I work really well with are professional women. And they show up to me and they resonate with me because they have mental health concerns. But at the root of what's going on for them is that they really struggle to say, no, that's not going to work for me. And they really have a hard time sort of sticking to their guns and being true to themselves and reconciling the fact that they can be kind and compassionate and also not be everything to everyone. And so that's the direction I'm going in. I've talked to folks pretty much in every arena of my life, and this is such a widespread challenge that so many people have. And so I thought, you know what, I've been thinking a lot about, because it's fall, and in the fall I like to drill down and figure out what's really essential in my life and what can I let go of. And in terms of my business specifically, I have been resisting niching down or niching down, however you want to say it. I've been resisting becoming more focused with what I say that I do because I want to be inclusive, right? And this is a really good example of me setting a boundary with myself and learning to say, you know what? I cannot be everything to everyone. I am really good at setting boundaries. I'm so good at it, like to a fault. It has gotten in the way from time to time. And as I'm talking with folks, I'm paying attention to what resonates and what really gets people the most bang for their buck. This really is it. It really is, helping folks figure out how do they say no in a way that is aligned with their integrity, that honors the person that they're talking with, honors the people they're interacting with on a daily basis, and also honors themselves. I think as women, in the Western world, or at least in the United States, I can speak to that, we're really taught that we are supposed to be everything to everyone. We're taught that we're not supposed to be angry because that means that we are hormonal or overreacting, we're over-emotional, and so we're not supposed to be angry, and we're also supposed to be everything to everyone, and we're not supposed to pay attention to ourselves. We're not supposed to prioritize ourselves in any meaningful way. And so what this mindset creates, what this culture creates, is that, one, we have difficulty setting boundaries. We have difficulty saying no because we're not supposed to, because we're supposed to be, quote, nice. And then from there comes the fact that if you don't set a boundary and you have a boundary that needs to be set and it keeps getting crossed, you get angry. This is the appropriate use of anger. Anger lets you know, hey, there's a boundary there and it is being crossed and it needs to not be. I am unsafe because in one way or another, my space is being compromised. And that can be physical space, psychological space, emotional space, workspace, whatever it is. But that's what anger is. And so then we're in a position where we're so resentful and angry because we haven't been able to set boundaries, and there's nothing we can do about it because we're supposed to be nice. And so this problem just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And it's a whole mess. It's such a mess. And it's heartbreaking to see. And this is the other reason why I'm moving in this direction. You know, I've watched the elder women in my life who are so ambitious, who work hard, right? Like pretty much all the women I know, like we are hard workers. We will do, like, give us a to-do list and we will knock that stuff out. And so, but these women in my life when I was growing up, you know, like they were saying yes all the time, and they worked so hard for their careers, highly educated, great jobs, high paying, like high power careers. But then because they're saying yes all the time, they burn out. And actually, like I've seen women essentially work themselves out of their careers and into the hospital, literally. And that's heartbreaking. You're not able to serve anyone if you're laying in a hospital bed, right? And so the other thing that I've seen that I can speak to is talking with other naturopathic doctors who identify as female, and other folks who are in helping professions, maybe folks who do massage, craniosacral, acupuncture, what have you. But women in helping professions, right, we have all of this context that I just described, and we so value being of help. It's so integral to our identity to be of service. And so if we have a patient visit that's running long, you know, I've talked to so many women in the helping professions who are like, I can't shut them down. Like, I can't hang up. I can't tell them they have to leave because that means that I'm not being of service, which I disagree with for various reasons, which I have a whole map for where I want to go with the podcast. And so I'm going to explore that in a later episode. But, you know, if you're not able to set those boundaries, one, it has to do with modeling relationships in that way, so that's really important. But also you end up burning yourself out, and you end up not being able to help across the swath of folks that you work with because you're devoting extra time to people along the way, and then that ends up taking time away from your own personal routines and what you need to do to rejuvenate yourself. And so we're taught, like, we have to say yes, we have to acquiesce to everyone around us to be, quote, nice. But then, you know, we lose our niceness because we're tired, we're angry, we're frustrated, we're resentful. And then a lot of folks will push that down, and then it will explode on whoever happens to be around them. And I cannot tell you, every single person, like verbatim, I will ask them, oh, what's your relationship to anger? And every woman I work with says, well, yeah, I get angry. And I'll ask them, well, how does that look for you? How do you express it? What do you do with that anger when it comes up? And they will say, again, almost verbatim every time, they will say, well, I try to hold it in, but sometimes it's too much and then I'll explode at the person who's with me, right? And it'll be like their parent, their spouse, their kids, whoever it is. So really common, so common. At any rate, so that's sort of the background about why I'm shifting directions, and why I'm really taking this focus. I think I know there are some folks who listen who are in fact business owners themselves, and I think it's interesting just from the psychological perspective of maybe if you do own a business, you already have a really good sense of your niche and your audience, and your marketing and your messaging is really on point. But it has been an interesting process to me how this is a gift I've had forever. Not forever. It was modeled in my home very well, very effectively. My mother always modeled good boundaries with me. My mom's spouse also always modeled really great boundaries with me. They're both clinical psychologists and, you know, exceptionally well versed at the word no. It was not something anyone in my family was afraid to say. But it's been interesting to me to notice this process unfolding where I want to be of service to as many people as possible. I want to be able to speak to as many people as possible. And in as much as, yes, my messaging does resonate and I do get positive feedback and I do have clients, it's not had the traction that I would like it to have. And so over the last few months, sort of paying really close attention to what are the things that people need? What are the things when it comes to the mental health space? Like, what's really showing up as a skill that's missing for folks? And drilling down into what's essential here. What is actually at the root of what's going on? What's the common thread that holds all of these different situations together? And then, of course, having the courage to turn back around and say, all right, well, this is what it seems to be. Let's give it a go and give it a try. And as I have been undertaking this process, having a sense of clarity has been kind of really transformative. I shouldn't say that with a question mark at the end of that sentence, but it has been really wild to see my energy levels increase and to see, I mean, I laid out social media messaging between now and like the middle of January, and it took me a fraction of the time it has taken me in the past. So just in my taking my own advice and setting really good boundaries for myself and deciding, you know what, this is the space that my business is going to occupy. This is the space that my service is going to occupy. And everything outside of that, I don't need to touch. I don't need to deal with that. I don't need to take that on. This is a form of boundary setting. And I can tell you that it has been really impressive in terms of what it has done for my productivity. And so I'm really excited to share this more directly and explicitly with folks on the podcast through one-to-one work. I have a webinar that I did a couple months ago that you can certainly check out. That's over at ponderandpractice.com/boundaries. If you want to get in on that. And there's some freebies too that you can download there for resources. But it's really exciting. It's really fun. And it's a really great reminder and embodiment that, you know, boundaries really are just a container for meaningful interaction. That's what a boundary is at its heart and soul. So let me turn back around and explain to you through all of that. Right now you have so much context, more than you wanted, about why I'm going in the direction that I'm going. But let me also talk through, like, what is an artful boundary? My new website is artfulboundaries.com, and I really stretched myself on the copy, but also it was interesting because this is the easiest website that I've written in as much as I was like really challenged and focused. Anyway, super interesting to observe this whole process unfolding. But what is an artful boundary? What does that mean to set an artful boundary? When I chose this term, and the reason I chose this term is because of what I mentioned before. A lot of people, especially women, not only, but especially folks who identify as female, they have this idea, like I said, that in order to be, quote, nice, in order to be, quote, kind, they have to say yes to every request that is made of them. They have to acquiesce to every pressure that comes upon them. And that is simply not the case. It is really, I don't want to say easy, that's not the right word, but if you have the right strategy and the right words and the right approach, setting boundaries is the only way to be of service and the only way to be of exceptional service. And for folks that I work with, high achieving, really ambitious women, they have really tightly held values, right? They have a sense of integrity and they do strive for excellence because that's how they know that they can be of service, is by putting out the most excellent product, putting together the best possible, package or class or, team, whatever the particular field is, but this is how they know that they are within their integrity and that they really are living out their purpose, is that they strive for excellence and they strive for being of service in a way that is exceptional. And an artful boundary is what happens when you articulate to the person that you're talking to or that you're interacting with, whether it's real-time verbal communication or a text-based communication like text or email, you communicate to that person, hey, I so appreciate you. I really value your presence in my life and experience. No. So an artful boundary is, and I said this earlier, is really being able to honor that person who's across from you in whatever medium and yourself at the same time. And what that does is that it lets the other person know in no uncertain terms, this is where you're at. There's no judgment about that. You're not forsaking them or abandoning them, but you are cognizant of the fact that in order for you to provide really excellent value, in order for you to show up with your full focus and attention and bring all of your excellence and expertise to bear for and with them, you know, this is not the best way for you. And maybe in fact you can't even do that right now because your plate is full. And so that's what I mean when I say that. And it's really helpful to have some phrases that are ready to go. And that's a practice that I do with folks, and we sort of brainstorm like, what are the situations where you feel the most pressure, where it's hardest for you to say no, and what kinds of words would make sense to use? What kind of words resonate with you that are aligned with your integrity, that are aligned with the fact that you really do care about this person, that you really do want to show up and be of service, but honestly, it's just not the right time. And there's absolutely no judgment about that. So that overall is what I mean when I say artful boundaries. There are 4 primary steps I go through with folks when we do this. And the first is to reconcile this idea that, you know, nice does not equal having to say yes all the time. And in fact, I hate the word nice. I had an English teacher when I was in high school who was like, he despised that word. And ever since I was in his class, I sort of have reflected on that and come around to his side. But, you know, you can be kind and say no. You can maintain your integrity and say no. And those two things are compatible. You can reconcile the fact that your no is of service. When you turn someone down so that you can say yes to something that matters to you, that is of service, because that person is going to be able to turn around and say, oh gosh, I really appreciate your candor. You know, thanks for letting me know. And they're going to be able to find somebody who can commit fully, who can provide their full attention, and who can, you know, get them what they need in the best way possible. The next thing I work with folks on, right? So first is reconciliation and we have so much tied up from childhood that kind of needs to be addressed and healed and reconciled. So that's the first piece. The second piece is really sorting out and getting clear on like what is in your integrity. What actions are 100% absolutely aligned with your integrity, right? And this is really important to know, because if you say community is a value that you hold and being of service within your community is a value that you hold, if you're killing yourself at work, or let me say that a little bit differently. So maybe say being really active in your family and neighborhood community is, you know, like number one thing for you. Like that is, in terms of your values and identity, that is the most critical important thing. If you're killing yourself at work and showing up at work, giving 110%, taking on more and more and more, saying yes to this, that, and the other, having to stay late every day, checking your email on weekends, time is limited. It's a limited resource. And if you are allocating time to work, you're not able to allocate time to your family and community. You just can't. Because there's only so much time in a day. So that's what I mean when I say what's within your integrity. This is something that is so helpful for folks, because when they sit back and they think, gosh, yeah, why am I saying yes to all of these things? Is it because, I don't know, whatever it is, they just think they have to say yes to everything because maybe they are afraid they'll lose their job. Maybe they, I don't know, whatever it is. So first thing is reconciling those messy emotions and sort of getting rid of those limiting beliefs about like kind has to, like, to be nice, you have to say yes to everything. And the second thing is getting super clear on what is within your integrity, so that when something shows up, when that text comes in from, your uncle 3 times removed, it's like an emergency thing, but it's not really an emergency, but like they need you. Can you say no to that because there's something more immediate in your, there's something else going on that's more important to you in that moment. And someone else really can take care of that other thing. So what is within your integrity? The third thing is paying attention to your body, paying attention to what is happening in your body. So your body's job is to keep you alive and safe, always and ever. And so your body provides you with reliable, up to the second, real-time feedback. And it lets you know if you are in fact in alignment with your integrity, right? So we can do mental thought processes, and I love mental processes, and I love logic, and I love journaling, and like doing all the cognitive work. And at a certain point, your body's gonna let you know, like, hey, not so much, kid. This is not the direction to go. The way I like to say it is that if your gut says no, you say no. Your gut is saying no for a reason. You need to say no and honor that. I cannot tell you, every single time I say yes, and there's a voice in my head that tells me that I shouldn't say yes, when I ignore that and like commit to something, it always ends badly. Every single time, like without fail. And I find that that's true with the folks that I work with as well. If your gut says no, you need to say no. And in order for you to know what your body is saying, in order for you to have a really clear awareness of what the sensations your body is giving you are, you have to pay attention. You have to learn to be present in your body. There's really no way around it. It is so critically important. And so I work with folks on helping them get in touch with what are those sensations? What does it feel like physically when you have, a romantic partner calling you and saying, hey, let's go do this thing, like come on over, but you already had something scheduled with your parents maybe, and so you were going to go see them, and now you feel this pressure because you really wanted to see your parents, but your romantic partner is like, you got to come see me now. Like, we haven't seen each other in a long time and we need to spend time together. What does that feel like in your body? What does that tension feel like? What does that pressure feel like? Where does it show up? Does it show up in your shoulders? Does it show up in your gut? Does it show up in like a clenched jaw? Does it show up as a headache? I can't tell you. You have to be in touch and pay attention to what those sensations are. As you become more practiced at this, right, all of these things are skills. There's nothing that I'm telling you that you cannot learn how to do. I would not be in business of doing what I do if it were impossible for someone else who is not skilled at this to become skilled at this. But as you learn to pay attention to your body, and as you learn to notice what those sensations are and notice what those signals are, then more and more quickly you notice, oh, hey, there's that pressure sensation. I know from my past experience and paying attention that this is the sensation that comes up when I really need to honor my own voice and speak my capital T truth. And then you can say, you know what? No, I'm not, like, yeah, we haven't seen each other in a minute, but I really need to go spend time with my parents because they really matter to me and I had this time allocated for them. Let's get together, this weekend or Saturday or whatever it is. Or we can do a Zoom call tonight after I get home from my parents. Whatever it might be. So again, just to recap, doing that reconciliation emotional work, doing that cognitive work of what is actually in your integrity, and then being in your body and seeing all these things line up physically. So those are the first 3 steps. And of course, the last thing is to practice, right? You have to practice. You have to do it. Like I said, this is a learnable skill. Boundary setting is a learnable skill. You can 100% do it. And furthermore, I hear from so many women, they're like, oh my God, I could never say no. I feel so guilty. Like I couldn't turn that person down, this, that, and the other. And I'm here to tell you, yes, you can say no. And no, you do not have to feel guilty about it. Does it take time and practice? Yes. Yes, it does. And it is 100% possible. 100% possible. Like I said earlier, I think I mentioned, like, I'll work with folks around their wording and the ways that they can say something so that it is concise, compassionate, and also clear, and let the other person know, like, no, this really isn't going to work for me. What happens over time as you practice, as you try out some languaging, as you pay attention to your body sensations, and as you become more proficient in this, as you become more proficient in this skill of boundary setting, what happens is that you start to see, like, oh, that didn't really work very well. Okay, let me try again later. And then it comes back around and you try something else and you say, oh, well, that worked a little bit better. Awesome. And then this skill, you become a pro at it. You become really good at it. Sure, there will be some situations that come up where, you know, ooh, that didn't go so well. And, you know, maybe you slip up and you say yes to something, or you acquiesce to a client or whatever it is, and you were like, gosh, I wish I really didn't do that. But you get better at it and you see what works, and you learn over the course of time, and over the course of developing this skill. What's really profound is that you learn that truly you can trust yourself. A lot of folks are afraid to be in new situations. They're afraid to enter into conversations because they don't trust themselves. They don't trust that they can navigate that in a way that is mindful and compassionate, and also honoring both whoever else is involved and themselves. And so as you learn to set really beautiful, artful boundaries, you know in your body that, oh, yeah, I can totally say no. That's fine. And you know that you can trust yourself, and you know that you are effective in achieving your goals in a way that is aligned with your values and integrity. And that's where the magic happens, because you start to carve out this space for yourself and protect time and space for yourself. Not necessarily physically, but certainly physically is a part of it. But you start to generate this little ecosystem around yourself that you're in charge of, and that you know that you can maintain. And that's really beautiful to see. It is incredible to see folks be able to, like, you know, see their value is only, I talk with folks who are like, well, I can't not work because that's where my value lies. Like, that's where my worth as a human lies. Even if, like, intellectually they know that's not true, that's what their body tells them. Like, and that's what, like, they have tension. That's like, ooh, if I don't work, then I'm not okay. And they get anxious around that. But then as they're able to set up boundaries, as they're able to set up their calendar more mindfully and say, you know what, I'm not going to work till 9 o'clock tonight. I'm going to stop at 7. And as they keep that boundary and then figure out, like, oh, I have 2 extra hours. What am I going to do with this? Oh, you know, I'd really love to dive into this novel I've been meaning to get to. You know, then they start to see, oh, hey, work didn't fall apart and I feel better. And the next day, right, I feel more energized and ready to work. And so this is why I say, like, your bottom line is going to improve. Your bottom line, if you're in business for yourself, if you're aspirational, or ambitious, if you're really ambitious and you have, like, very specific career goals, the better you are at setting boundaries, the more effective you will be at achieving those goals, because you can trust yourself, you can trust your judgment, and you'll have more energy and you'll have more focus, and you'll be able to interact with folks in a way that really does garner trust and respect from them, because you are learning to trust and respect yourself as you go. And so naturally, that's what's going to come back to you. It's so exciting. It is so exciting. I love it. I feel so energized since I've decided to make the switch. I'm so excited. Anyway, I hope that you are understanding the pieces of why this really does matter and why this skill of boundary setting and setting artful boundaries specifically is so important. It doesn't have to be like abandoning anyone or cutting off relationships. The process I use with folks is really designed to help them use their boundaries to facilitate really meaningful interaction and really satisfying work. That's the underlying cause of why I do what I do. I'll give you a brief example before I wrap up here. So I hate calls, telephone calls, which is, I mean, I do business on the phone and it's fine, but I have a little bit of anxiety, and I get a little bit of an anxiety hit when I have to do a phone call. And I kept getting these calls from this company that wanted to include me in their directory, but I didn't really know what it was. It didn't really make sense to me. And I was avoiding the calls because I was like, I don't want to deal with this. It doesn't make sense, whatever. But I kept getting calls from them. I kept getting calls, like several times a week. So finally, I think I forgot that that's the number that they were using. And I answered the phone, and the person on the other end of the line, perfectly nice woman, said, oh, hey, we're calling from this directory. We have your name, but we need more information before we can include you. This, that, and the other. And I was like, okay. And on the inside, I'm having these sensations of ugh, and my gut is kind of uncomfortable, and I'm getting tense and just sweaty and not good. And so she keeps talking, and I said, you know what? Can I opt out? Can I just not be in your directory? And she stopped and she said, oh, yeah, of course. She was like, thank you so much for your time. Sorry to bother you. Have a great day. And I said, okay, thanks. Bye. And we hung up, and that was it. And then I didn't hear from them again, right? So this is a fairly small example. This is not life-changing stuff, but I just want to illustrate the time and energy that was going into seeing these calls come up, listening to the voicemails, thinking, ugh, I wish this would go away. It's not going away. And the recurring anxiety and cycle of just mental energy being siphoned off of that. In that one conversation, finally realizing oh, hey, can I not? And then it was done, and all of that energy returned back to me, that focus returned back to me, and that wasn't a thing that was playing in my mind anymore, right? And so it frees up, and again, this is not a life-shattering example, but I think it's a really relatable story about just learning to say, you know what, thanks but no thanks, and have a great day. So, yeah. At any rate, again, the new website that I have up is called artfulboundaries.com, and I will link to it in the show notes, and you can go check that out and see if you resonate. I would love to work with you. I offer an initial 30-minute complimentary consult to new clients, and so we can talk through what you have going on and, see what we can do about that. And then also I wanted to let you know that I have done a number of two. I thought it was more than that, but I've done 2 episodes on the podcast before about boundaries and boundary setting. Number 9 and number 62 are both about boundary setting. And so if you're into this, if you're interested, you can certainly go back and check those out. Additionally, if you head on over to ponderandpractice.com, all spelled out, ponderandpractice.com/boundaries, there is a page there where you can get access to a freebie. There's a 5-step guide. I need to update it. But there's a 5-step guide for how to set better boundaries. And then there's also a link to the webinar that I did a couple months ago about, building better boundaries. And then if you head to the shop on ponderandpractice.com, there's also an ebook, a little workbook. It's I think it's 29 pages. I say it's 39 pages because it sounds nicer than 29. But there's a 29-page workbook on the website as well that you can buy. It's $10. And you can walk through the process that I use with folks and helping them and supporting them set really good boundaries for themselves. So tons of resources available to you at every price point and level, from free all the way through, one-on-one consultation for a 6-month package is, not free for sure. So at any rate, I hope that you enjoy this. I'm going to be pursuing a number of topics all about boundaries and different aspects of it and nuance of it, and I'm just so excited. I feel so energized, and this has been a really solid decision that I've made. I feel we'll see how it goes, but so far it feels really good. And I'm going to have, just so that you know, I'm going to have a few interviews coming up. I did an interview with someone who does personal training, and that was really exciting, and he is someone who does weight neutral training, so that's not strictly speaking in line with this new direction that I'm going, but I think a lot of us let our boundaries go when it comes to our own tending our strength and exercise and movement, so I don't think it's so far out of reach. And then I think at some point before the end of the year, I'm also going to have someone on who's a clinical psychologist, and she works with the aging population. So we'll talk with her about like longevity and how growth continues through the lifespan, and maybe get into a little bit of a conversation with her about what she sees in folks who are or are not able to set boundaries. I'm not sure yet, we'll see, but that's what's coming down the pipeline. So yeah, I think that's all I had to share with you today. If you find value from this episode, if you have a friend who is phenomenal but running herself ragged, saying yes to everything and like burning herself out, send her this episode. Let her know that there are resources available and that boundary setting is in fact a learnable skill. Go ahead and hit subscribe, leave a review and a rating if you have a few minutes. It would be much appreciated. That helps other folks find the podcast and get some useful information as well. All right, friends. Well, happy Tuesday if you're listening on Tuesday, or happy whatever day it happens to be when you're listening here. And until next time, take care.